Welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us, well, a really fascinating collection of sources today. It seems to weave together ancient Greek myth, some pretty deep esoteric traditions, and some really powerful symbolic imagery.
It's quite a stack, yeah. We're zoning in on one specific, really potent myth, the eighth labor of Hercules,
Yeah.
and looking at how different traditions, like Freemasonry, even tarot, they find these incredible layers of meaning in it. And it points towards something surprisingly relevant, actually, to our own inner lives.
Exactly. So that's our mission today, right? To unpack this eighth labor, the taming of the man-eating mares of Diomedes, and really explore its maybe unexpected connections to self-mastery. We'll see how it's symbolized through Masonic teachings, the tarot's hanged man, all drawing from the material you've gathered. So let's jump right in.
Okay, so we start in Thrace with King Diomedes. He's painted as this, tyrannical, violent ruler. And it kind of makes sense when you look at his parentage. He's the son of Ares, the god of war.
Ah, right. And his infamous possessions were these four mares, more like monsters than horses, really. The sources even name them: Podardos, Lampon, Xanthos, and Danos. They weren't just wild, they were man-eaters. Some sources even say they breathed fire, kept in a bronze manger, iron chains, the whole deal.
Yeah, and their diet.
Yeah.
Diomedes fed them the flesh of strangers, his captured enemies. It's a chilling detail, really. Immediately tells you everything you need to know about the king and, his pets.
So Eurystheus, as he does, gives Hercules this seemingly impossible task: go steal these terrifying mares.
Right, so Hercules shows up, and there's this clash with the local tribe, the Bistones. Hercules gets the upper hand at first, tries to herd the mares down towards the sea.
But the tribe, they regroup, they attack again, and this is where tragedy strikes, isn't it? Hercules has to fight, and he makes this, fateful decision to leave the mares with his young companion, Abderus.
And the mares, they live up to their horrifying reputation. They just overpower and devour Abderus. It's stark, it's violent, a direct consequence of their untamed nature.
Hercules is enraged, obviously. He turns his fury on Diomedes himself, defeats him, slaughters the cruel king.
And then comes this really pivotal, almost shocking moment. Hercules takes Diomedes' body and feeds it to his own man-eating mares.
And what's really remarkable, and this is where the symbolism starts clicking in, is that this act, feeding them their master, the one who, indulged their monstrous appetite, it pacifies them. It somehow breaks their ferocity.
Exactly. After that, Hercules is able to bind them, the now tamed horses, and lead them back to Eurystheus.
Okay, so now, here's where this ancient story gets this profound new layer of meaning, right? In these esoteric interpretations, like you find in some Masonic teachings, the four man-eating mares, they stop being just literal beasts. They become these potent symbols for the unchecked passions and vices inside us.
Yeah, the material links them pretty specifically to things like wrath, greed, gluttony, lust, and their hunger, that hunger for human flesh. That represents the destructive, insatiable nature of these desires. When they're just let loose, they consume the soul, essentially, just like the mares consumed people.
And Diomedes, their cruel master, he represents that tyrannical force within us, the unrefined self.
Precisely. Often called the profane self. It's that part of us driven purely by, let's say, immediate material wants, instant gratification. It's the part that doesn't try to master these lower passions, but actually indulges them, feeds them.
Right. And this connects, you said, directly to the early stages of the Masonic journey, like the entered apprentice starting that work of self-purification.
Exactly. That fundamental task of identifying and subduing these powerful internal forces. So the act of Hercules feeding Diomedes to the mares, it's seen as this powerful allegory for sacrificing that profane self.
Sacrificing the ego, almost.
You could say that. It's about letting go of our attachment to purely material or selfish desires. You let the lower nature consume the very part of you that fed it. And that allows for a transformation, a move towards a higher state of being.
So the core lesson, kind of blunt, is what we indulge without any mastery, it's eventually going to devour us.
That's the crux of it. It reminds me of that quote often attributed to Albert Pike. The uninitiated man is a slave to his passions, while the true initiate masters them and uses them for the greater good. So it's not about killing the energy, it's about mastering its direction.
Okay. And you mentioned the number 4 is significant here, too, the 4 mares.
Yes, definitely. In many mystical traditions, 4 often stands for the 4 elements, and crucially, the 4 lower bodies or vehicles through which we experience the world.
Okay. So like the physical body linked to earth. Yeah. That's space, desires, hunger, indulgence.
Right. And the emotional body, linked to water, representing those unbridled feelings, anger, envy, fear, that sort of thing.
Then the mental body, air, maybe chaotic thoughts, confusion, or even arrogance.
Yeah. Your arrogance in our own intellect, exactly. And finally, the spiritual body linked to fire. In its unchecked state, this could be like raw ambition without direction, or even spiritual pride.
So the initiate's task, mirroring Hercules taming these horses, is really about bringing these four fundamental parts of the self into, well, harmony, governing them with wisdom instead of being ruled by them.
Precisely. And this whole idea, these primal forces needing mastery, it finds some really fascinating echoes when we look at the astrological connections the sources point out. Aries, the sign ruled by Mars, which is, the Roman name for Ares.
Diomedes' father.
Exactly. Aries is associated with that raw, impulsive energy, initiative, the warrior spirit. It links directly back to Diomedes and the violent nature of his mares.
It's like Aries represents that initial burst of force. It can be destructive if it's untamed, but incredibly powerful if it's directed properly.
Right. So Hercules feeding Diomedes to the horses. It becomes this powerful metaphor for the Aries journey itself. It's not about destroying the energy of Mars or Aries completely, but overcoming its destructive tendencies by turning that energy inward.
Okay, I see. Using that power not for external conquest or just unchecked indulgence, but to actually master your own impulsive nature, learning to direct that force with wisdom, not just brute strength.
You got it. And maybe no single image captures this kind of transformation through surrender better than a really powerful symbol from the tarot, the Hanged Man.
Ah, the Hanged Man. Let's picture that card. He's hanging there, usually upside down, often from a T-shaped cross, maybe a living tree, by 1 foot, right?
Usually, yeah. The other leg is bent, often forming a kind of number 4 shape. His hands might be bound, but crucially, his expression is often serene, calm. Sometimes there's even a halo, suggesting not suffering, but enlightenment.
That upside-down visual, that inversion, that's key, isn't it? The sources say it signifies a complete reversal of perspective.
Totally. It's the card that basically says enlightenment, wisdom, a new way of seeing things.
Yeah.
It often comes not through struggle, not through force, but through letting go, through surrender. His posture isn't torture, it's a voluntary choice, a sacrifice for a higher purpose.
You see parallels, don't you? Like Odin hanging from the world tree, Yggdrasil sacrificing himself to gain wisdom.
Exactly. Or concepts of martyrdom for a higher truth in other traditions. The Hanged Man embodies faith, profound patience, and the kind of transformation that really only emerges from stillness, from deep contemplation.
So it's really about letting go, releasing that need for control, stop fighting everything maybe, allow things to unfold.
That's a huge part of it. This surrender isn't weakness. It's framed as a profound act of trust. And that trust allows for deep inner change, kind of like a chrysalis transforming. It really challenges our usual way of thinking, doesn't it? Our linear, action-oriented, goal-driven mindset.
Yeah, it pushes back against that constant striving.
It does. It reminds us that sometimes the most important work happens in stillness, in silence, through yielding, not constant effort.
And it embraces paradox, right? Finding power through powerlessness, gaining insight through stillness, achieving transformation through sacrifice. It asks you to flip your assumptions.
Absolutely. It forces you to question things, find value in unexpected places. It's a real counterpoint to a world obsessed with action and control. It speaks to yielding, waiting, maybe even divine timing.
Okay, so tying this all together, the sources place this entire complex understanding, taming passions, sacrificing the lower self, the wisdom gained through surrender, they place it on the third step of Jacob's ladder, logic.
Yeah, and that can feel a bit counterintuitive at first glance, can't it? Logic. We usually think of logic as, linear reasoning, following a clear path based on what seems rational or maybe self-serving.
Right, so why logic here?
Well, this is where logic is being used in a more, let's say, elevated sense. It's not just about everyday calculation. It's about achieving a higher understanding, where you recognize that what might seem logical or immediately beneficial for the ego, for that profane self.
Like Diomedes feeding his desires.
Exactly. You realize that path is actually detrimental to your true growth, to reaching a higher consciousness in the long run.
I see. So the sacrifice feeding Diomedes to the mares, surrendering control like the Hanged Man, these aren't illogical acts of self-denial from this higher viewpoint. They actually become the only logical choice.
Precisely. From this elevated perspective, sacrificing the ego's demands for what is genuinely truthful or beneficial for your, let's say, spiritual evolution. That is the most logical decision for long-term progress and higher awareness. The labor's lesson, put on this step, underlines that reason and base desire are often pulling in different directions, True ascent requires sacrificing that self-serving will, because ultimately it's the rational path to a higher state.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together then. This deep dive really reveals that the eighth labor of Hercules, it's far more than just a monster-slaying story. It's a rich allegory for inner transformation.
Definitely. It shows us our inner landscape, populated by these wild horses, our powerful, unchecked passions, and they're often ruled by this tyrannical ego, the Diomedes within, who just keeps feeding these destructive forces.
And that act of feeding the master to the mares, it's this crucial, maybe violent, but necessary sacrifice, letting the lower nature consume the very part that sustained it, which kicks off the purification process.
And the four mares linking to our four lower bodies, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, that highlights that this whole self-mastery thing involves bringing all these aspects into harmony, not letting anyone run wild and dominate destructively.
And the Hanged Man just embodies this path so powerfully, doesn't it? Showing that getting profound insight, achieving real transformation, it often demands a voluntary sacrifice of control, a surrender to a higher perspective that you find through stillness and patience.
Yeah, they all interlock beautifully, describing this profound journey of self-mastery. And placing it on the step of logic on Jacob's ladder adds that really crucial layer. It tells us this seemingly counterintuitive process, sacrificing personal will, isn't illogical at all. It's actually the highest form of reason when you're looking from the perspective of true spiritual or personal growth.
It becomes the most rational choice for becoming who you're truly meant to be.
Exactly. So as you listening, reflect on all this. How does it resonate with your own life? Where do you maybe encounter those wild horses of unchecked passions or desires? Have you faced that challenge of yielding control or maybe sacrificing an immediate self-serving want to gain a new perspective or achieve something more meaningful long term? What does taming your internal Diomedes actually look like?
It's worth considering, isn't it? How readily we default to believing that force, action, constant control, that's the path to success, to mastery. Yet, these ancient symbols, coming together across different traditions, they strongly suggest that true power, real wisdom, lasting transformation, maybe it's found not in conquering through force, but in that profound, sometimes paradoxical act of surrendering the self-serving will. Something to think about.